Welcome to another episode of Hey Dummy, a testimony of an overcomer. I would like to at this time just to let you all know that we'll be talking about one of the aspects in the Hey Dummy book which touched about on my life, and that was actually bullying. And we're going to have my lovely wife, Dawn, who is a marriage and family therapist. She graduated from the Louisville Presbyterian Church in seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. So at this time, I'm going to have you ask me some questions about this very important topic that played a very critical part in my life as a young man in the third grade, and the challenges that really impacted my life.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me back again, Lonnie. You're right. According to the National Center of Education Statistics, during the 2019 through 2020 school year, approximately 20% of students aged 12 to 18 reported being bullied at school. So we know that is happening to a lot of kids. And this is just from the kids from the age of 12 to 18. This is not talking about children who are bullied or teased in the younger grades. And I know that you had some of those experiences yourself. So why don't you tell us about an experience where you yourself were bullied that that you still remember that had a major impact on your self-esteem or the way you saw yourself in school?
Well, there was, Don, there was a couple real serious situations that had happened to me during that time. Often, as a child coming from a dysfunctional home and not being able to have the clothing that the other students would wear in the school, and that's especially during that time, I just didn't have just really couldn't focus. You know, when I would go to school, sometimes I couldn't focus on the lessons. I couldn't do any of the assignments. Like I had mentioned before, one time I was asked to stand up in front of the class and just to add 2 plus 2 on the chalkboard. And for the life of me, I couldn't get that correct. So a lot of the students, they made fun of me on that. Often living in the inner city, I would have to walk to school, and sometimes that would be like maybe 20, 25 minutes just to get to our school. And at that time, you had a lot of kids that were just bullies, and they would see me walk to school. They will make fun of me. They'll knock me down. They'll take my shoes off. They'll punch me and what have you. And it really made me feel as a child that I was just not worthy. I felt like that there was something that was wrong with me, from being bullying in the where we played at, in the yard and what have you, to actually going inside of the actual cafeteria. Even for school, they will like take my food and what have you and throw it on the floor, or take your head and kind of smash it into the the table and what have you. Those things actually happen. But what was so ironic was that no one really was there at that time to help me. But it became such a serious situation that I do recall there was a student by the name of Rod Hennings. Today, his name is Bishop Rod Hennings. And I never forget that Bishop Rod Hennings, he stepped in because we were at the same table, and he said, "You're not going to do that to Lonnie anymore." And he was kind of like a well, muscular young man at that time, and he kind of stood up for me. And because there was a time I was getting ready to retaliate against those students in that cafeteria. And I never forget Rod Hennings, he called me to the side after that incident. He said, "Lonnie, listen, you are my friend, and I just want to let you know that you're special, and you don't have to let those other students get to you like that." He said, "I'm here with you." and he let me know, said, there's something special about you. You can make it. He was just kind of encouraging me in his own way. And I remember the times that Rod Hennings would also invite me to his home. And he introduced me to his family, and he became more of a brother. So that was kind of like a real help to me, that encounter that I experienced.
So you mentioned that the bullying would happen on the way to school, while you were at school, out on the playground, even in the cafeteria. Were there any adults around? Did you find yourself walking to school by yourself? Were your brothers and sisters with you? Tell me a little bit about that. Who else was around you?
Well, during that time, I was really by myself. I didn't have anyone that would walk to school with me. I mean, I walked by myself. And even when I got into the school, even during like the cafeteria time or what have you, you had like what they call a monitor, your monitor tag, but they didn't do anything. Only thing that they would say, kids, stop it.
Right.
But even at sometimes they were laugh, so it wasn't really any kind of support in that area at all.
And I get that. A lot of times school environments can be kind of chaotic, and they see something going on and they don't necessarily know who did what first, and they don't often intervene. Did you feel like you could reach out to anyone to tell them what was going on, either a teacher or even one of the monitors? Because it sounds like you were experiencing more than what other kids would normally experience, like normal teasing, because a lot of kids get teased at school. Why do you think you were targeted maybe at a higher level that constituted bullying? Because a lot of kids get teased, or their kids make jokes about them or crack on them. Back when I was in school, they would crack on each other and make jokes. What do you think it was about you or about your situation that people targeted you more?
Well, there's a couple of things you got to look at. I feel like the environment that I was in.
So it was pretty rough environment.
A very rough environment. For some reason, kids know the state that you're in, as far as your family. And I mean by that, if you're a single parent and your child, you're wearing the same clothes to school every day, and you really don't get a bath, because technically you really don't know anything about that, even though mom was trying to do the best that you can. So when your kid go to school, they're wearing their brother's shoes, which is, he wore, let's say, 10 and a half, and you only wore 5. You're tripping over the shoes, you're wearing the same clothes. Then often when you come walking, your bullies there, they will beat you up, how much money you got, even though I didn't have any money, or try to take whatever that they can. So for me, there wasn't any support in that area, with the exception of Rod Hennings. So one of the things that I try to start doing is wrestling, and try to shadow box and stuff like that, because I felt that by doing that kind of gave me, it kind of encouraged me a little bit that I had to learn how to defend myself. And I still got into fights. I mean, that didn't stop. But I felt that if I continued to let them beat me up like that, I had to kind of learn how to defend myself, if that makes sense.
Do you feel like you could reach out and tell your parents or your older brother and sisters about what was happening to you?
Not really. Let me backtrack on. I couldn't tell my brother, because my eldest brother, he really wasn't there. He was in a much higher grade than what I was, and he was just not really in.
Yeah, so he wouldn't have been at the
No, he wasn't in the family unit at that time. Now, I do recall my sister, Sherry, who was the eldest child. I remember when I was in that process of getting bullying and being pushed around, and my sister, Sherry, stepped in and tried to fight that individual person. So I do recall that. But besides that, I really didn't have that really kind of support, until it got to the point that I had mentioned in the last episode about the needle's eye, and all of those factors went into place to try to address the various things that I was being faced with as a child.
Well, tell me, what do you think? What were some of the beliefs that you started to develop about yourself because you were being bullied?
Well, I believed at that time that there was no hope for me. I believed that there was no change for me. I believed that I was useless. I believed that I could never be like the other students that would get A's on a report card. I believed that I would never be that student that the teacher would recognize and applaud for the class or those students doing a fantastic job. I just felt at that time that there was no hope for me.
Well, that's a great point because, we know that a lot of kids who do experience severe bullying, like you're describing, which goes beyond like the sort of regular teasing that most kids experience in school, that they can develop really low self-esteem. And some of them can begin to develop feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, depression, anxiety, and some of them may become suicidal or have suicidal thoughts. And so it really is important for kids to feel like they can uh, reach out to somebody to try to get the help that they need and that someone will care and intervene in their situation. So you mentioned that what gave you the idea to sort of practice, wrestling moves or shadow boxing to try to like make yourself feel or look tougher to other kids? What gave you that idea?
Well, actually, I would say during our gym time, they would have for the males. They would teach them how to play basketball, and then they had a situation, groups where they teach those that want to be able to wrestle. I never got to that level of actually in competition or anything like that,
Right.
but it was a great thing for me because I could recall when we were doing the wrestling. One of the students that actually, well, there was two incidents. I just love talking about this. There was one student that was really good, making fun of me, and they matched me up with them in wrestling, and I took them down. And
So you learned some techniques.
yeah, I learned some techniques.
Yeah.
I learned those techniques, and I took him down,
Yeah.
and kind of pinned him.
Yeah.
So
They made him think twice
yeah,
about messing
yeah,
with
and I just kind of nudged it just a little bit harder on him. So that was very good. So that made me say, hey, there's something here. The other situation was that when it came to basketball at that time, they would match our classroom up, and everybody had a part that they had to do. So even though there was one guy that was excellent in basketball, he was really good. But when they match us up in the classroom to play basketball, I actually beat him. You had like the 101 score and what have you. And I think I beat him about like maybe you got to get the first 16 points whoever get in. I think I had beat him by 2 points. And I never forget that he was so upset, but it was just those little, I call them little golden nuggets that helped me to say, hey, you know what? I'm not that strongy guy that everybody can beat up. The light came on for me, and I just realized that, hey, if I really applied myself, I can. There's something about this, and then I think that during the motivation classes with Dr. Razi, when they took me into the motivation class because they see everything I was going through, that helped to develop me and it lifted up my self-esteem as a child.
Yeah. Well, I love those descriptions because it is those sort of uh, learning moments where we find out our own strengths and capabilities. So you grew up in a home where there were 6 kids and you were one of the younger kids. And it's not unusual for the younger kids to sort of get, passed over by their parents. The parents have put the work into the older kids, and they often will have the older kids take care of the younger kids, and they don't know what's going on all the time. But this whole idea that you started learning some of your own strengths and weaknesses and realizing that you had maybe even some natural athleticism. I know later on you did also play football at one point, and you started to realize, wait a minute, and you started showing other people who you were,
Right.
even when they couldn't see it because they made assumptions about who you were based on your appearance. Yeah.
One of the things I really loved that really helped me out during that time was running track. I used to love track, and I was so good at it that they put me the 4 mile relay, and I was just good at it. And I just felt the freedom of running, the freedom to be able to think. I would get up early in the morning and just run around the house, run around the block. But then I noticed that I wouldn't say that the bullying stopped, but I would say every day, every semester, every class, it got better. It kind of went away with it.
So it happened. It helped.
Yes.
As you kind of grew and you sort of made your own place among your peers, then they stopped picking on you as much.
They stopped picking on me, and then I find myself, there were other peers that were in the same situation that I was in. So then we found ourselves working together.
Okay. Yeah.
Even when we go to the cafeteria, we sat together.
Okay.
We strengthen one another. We encourage one another. You had Michael, who was very good at math. I was horrible at math. But Michael would say, "Hey, Lonnie, do you need any help?" We find ourselves helping one another. If John Howes, another student who's outstanding, from Youngstown, Ohio, his family kind of adopted me in a way. I remember I would go over his house often, and he will help me out. And he was an honor student, straight A student. And I just looked up to him, and that also gave me the inspiration that, hey, I can do this. This can happen. I can make it. But it's just that in that neighborhood, just those few took me in, and eventually I overcame that bullying. I was not, I got a little buffed up a little bit, and I think I was okay.
Well, I love that you point out just having one person take notice and do an intervention can change the tone of things, because a lot of times all of us have been in those situations where someone was being bullied, and there are times people won't say anything because they don't want to get picked on either, so they try to hide in the background. Even if they don't think it's right, they may not say anything. So I love that you have those examples of people who took a moment and noticed it and was like, this needs to stop. They would intervene. And I think that's important to people can empower themselves to be that one person who doesn't let something like that go on. Tell me, with those experiences, have you ever been in a situation, were you ever in a situation as a kid where you saw someone else being bullied, and how did you respond?
Well, I have seen that situation, but again, I stepped in with them. And when I mean I stepped in, I helped them push back. In other words, I would go stand side by side with them. And being in that type of environment, for what I went through, I was willing, and I hope this doesn't come off the wrong way, but if it came down to it, I'm willing to step in with them. I'm willing to tough it up right with them. In other words, if you're going to pick on Robert, and Robert and I is friends, and Robert, he helps me out, I'm going to help Robert out. So if Robert's going to get a black eye, I'm going to get a black eye too. But it's not going to be an easy day for the person that's bullying us. And again, we begin to walk to school and what have you together.
Sort of create some sort of partnership.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is a hard thing because, again, most of us, even as parents or even as grandparents now, we went to school, we grew up, and we ourselves might have been teased at some level. And it is hard to try to figure out what's the difference between just normal teasing, normal, playing the dozens, that's old school, or cracking on somebody, and what constitutes bullying. From your opinion, what do you think made yours worse? How did you know, that you were being singled out differently than other kids?
Well, because they will target, especially the way you dress. They'll target the way that they can look at you. You're still wearing Okie tennis shoes. I think now Okie's in style, right? But they will look at your shoes. They'll look at how you look, how you dress, what you eat. And especially during that time, we were getting free meals. And believe it or not, um, parents do talk to their children. Don't associate with this one. They're from a poor economic class. You just was targeted. I mean, when we talking about bullying, when you're walking down the streets and kids actually shove you down and kick you,
Right.
or tell you, hey, how much money you got, stupid, and just really rough you up, those is there.
So the level of violence.
It's
was
the
different.
level of violence, and you are
your inability to
right.
defend
You are
yourself.
correct. Some people they can say different things about your names, but it goes to that whole complete level when you start putting your hands on the child. When you start roughing them up and what have you.
Yeah.
It takes it to a whole. And every day when you come home from school, you got to fight your way through. When you're going to school, you have to fight your way.
Tell me about that when you say when you go home. Oh, you mean
when
on
you
your
go
way home? On the way home?
Yes.
Okay, to your
Right.
home. There,
Right. You have to go through that saying
because
something.
there were people outside that
Yes,
were harassing you
yes,
and
yes,
intimidating.
yes.
They knew you guys were coming through that area.
Right,
Or-
right.
yeah.
But then you have to, when I look at it, you have some of those students, they had bad family situations also. And so sometimes they say people that have come from a bad environment, or things just are not right in their home setting, they take it out on the smaller guy.
Yeah, hurting people hurt people.
Yes,
That's the
yes,
saying
yes,
that we say, yeah.
Now,
Hurting people hurt
the
other people.
other critical thing is about that is sometimes there's different types of bullying, and I think that you have.
Yeah, there are different types of bullying, and I think that's a good point because in the past we would just think about people teasing people, verbally harassing people. Whether people would ostracize people, like you said, certain either their parents are sending them to school with certain prejudices, or kids, they have cliques, and there's certain people they don't associate. That sort of social exclusion. That's a type of bullying. Physical aggression, which is what you described, of being pushed down, slapped, having things taken from you, having your head slammed, being hit, things thrown at you, those kind of thing. And now we are concerned with kids being cyberbullied. So all of those where, they're on social media or people are posting things about them that aren't true or exposing things about them that would be embarrassing and using that sort of information to sort of degrade or humiliate someone else. And so those types of bullying can all take place in different contexts, and there are levels to it. And it's often a sense of helplessness or hopelessness that causes people to begin to develop, like those deep feelings of low self-esteem, those deep feelings of powerlessness, and, and sometimes those suicidal ideations. And it's really important that we talk about it. And then we think about, both as adults, how we can empower kids to sort of come back at it. Now, did anybody give you any ways to like combat bullying? Because again, I think about when I grew up, we were taught ways to like verbally defend ourselves. Like if somebody said shut up, we would say shut, don't go up, prices due. Take my advice, you shut up too. Like we would talk back. It would be sort of silly ways we would sort of gain our own empowerment. Or if somebody played the dozens, cracked on our moms, we'd crack back on their mom, or or something like that. Or sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. I know kids don't say that anymore, but those were ideas that were planted in our minds that sort of gave us permission to verbally defend ourselves, to let bullies know, I'm not scared of you, I'm not intimidated about you, I don't care what you say, I'm not, you're not gonna, I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off me, sticks to you. That's something we were taught as kids. Other kids would teach you that. And we go, yeah, that I'm going to say that. What kind of things did you experience that kind of made, like you said, it sounds like sometimes the personal, but did anybody give you any advice on how to handle bullies?
I would say the best advice that I have received, and let me take a step back. In Youngstown, there was a street that I had to walk down every day. It's called Hillman Street, one of the toughest areas in the city of Youngstown. And I recall, and I believe I had mentioned it one time before, every day I would pass the center called the Needle's Eye. And the Needle's Eye had a saying plastered across their building that you are somebody because God doesn't make any junk. So every day I will walk past that resonated in me, even though at a moment I couldn't really understand every word, but I understand that what does that mean? You are somebody because God doesn't make any junk. It was then that as a child I began to open up that door, and I saw a lady by the name of Irma Davis, who was the counseling center director, and she began to instill within me that you are somebody, and she would be able to, at that time, that I would go after school, and she would take those moments and encourage me, and if there's anything that I have encountered for that day, she will help me. Now, before she did all of that, she began to work with the school system and my mother to make sure, is it okay? So she began to work. Yes, she got the permission. And then she will always say, Lonnie, remember this. You can do all things through Christ that will strengthen you. When you feel that you're getting to that point when people are picking on you, when you feel that you're having difficulties in learning or you stumble or you can't think, just remember you can do all things through Christ that will strengthen you. And that has always been my word for the day. Amen. And that has encouraged me all throughout my life.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that was a lot of, what formed, a lot of what, how you felt about yourself at that time. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, Don, I thank you for taking the time and us being together and talking about my experience, my childhood experience. Now, you have something special, too. You have a series of books that you have written, but you have one book that talks about the subject that we just discussed. Can you share with us what that's all about?
Yes. Today I brought with me the book that I wrote, it's been about 5 years ago now. It's called The Day Brittany and I Made a Bully Cry. And this takes place in elementary school with two little girls and who are best friends who encountered a bully. And I'm going to share it with you today. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. And again, this book was written for really small children because we know kids start experiencing teasing and bullying, frankly, as early as, preschool, when you have one kid in the class who's just going to push their way through and demand their way and try to control everybody. Mm-hmm. In this case, these two little girls are very small and they're in kindergarten. So I'll read it for you. Okay. Hi, my name is Kaylee, and this is Brittany. Brittany is my best friend, and she lives next to me. We play at home and we play at school. In the summertime, we even play in the pool. At school, we have a lot of other friends, too. There's Courtney and Mir and Amber Sue. Yes, we all played together, and we got along fine, until a new girl came. Her name was Kiki Devine. But Kiki was a mean girl. No, she wasn't very nice. When we would try to play, she would try to start fights. First, we told the teacher, like you're supposed to do. But then she poured purple paint all over Brittany's shoes. Next, we tried to ignore her, but that didn't work because when we tried to ignore her, she tore my shirt. Yes, we tried everything to make Kiki go away. We just wanted to have fun. We just wanted to play. Then came the day when I went home crying because Kiki told the teacher that I was lying. So I told my mama everything that was wrong, and she said she was sorry, but I had to stay strong. Then I told her how Kiki always looks sad, and when I asked her what's wrong, she just gets mad. Mm-hmm. Mommy says sometimes hurting people make other people hurt too. That might be the reason Kiki keeps messing with you. Then she said, I think I know what to do. We'll try this plan to stop Kiki from messing with you. So Mom called Brittany's mom that day after school. Then we all talked with each other about what we should do. The next day, the principal came when it was math time. When I looked at the clock, it was 9:30. When we got to the office, we all were surprised to find everyone's mom was there, including Kiki Devine's. Then Kiki's mom told us everything she's been going through, things that kids shouldn't know about unless they really have to. Then Brittany and I took one of Kiki's hands and we said, "We're sorry about what happened to you. Won't you let us be your friend?" Then Kiki burst out crying and we didn't know what to do. "Yes, you can be my friend," she said, "if you let me be your friend too." So that's the whole story. I tell you no lie. That's the truth about the day Brittany and I made a bully cry.
Thank you, Dawn, so much for sharing that excellent story. And again, I want to thank you all in our audience for taking the time out to look at our podcast again. Thank you.